Well, good morning, guitar fans. Today is December the 30th, and tomorrow is New Year's Eve. So today on the back of the bench, I have, you can kind of see in the background there, a red something. Um, it's a red American Telecaster. It's getting a little bit of fretwork done on it today. It's going to get new strings and a setup. So if you're interested in seeing what's happening with this American Telecaster, stay tuned. Well, we got the guitar set up on the workbench here, and did a little work on it already, but I'll kind of just let you know what I've done. The first thing I did was I checked the neck here, took the strings off, put the wrench in to the truss rod, set this neck in an absolute straight position, and in order to make sure that it's straight, we have a tool like this, and we can put it on there, and then we can go down here and we can take a look and make sure that we got no light showing through and it doesn't rock. It's absolutely straight. So once we get that in an absolute straight position, we can use this beam, and we can run this across on top of the frets here. Now let me explain what we got going on here. This guitar was bought in 2014, so it's got 15, 16, 17, 18. It's got 5 years of playing on it. And what had happened is I had some pretty deep, noticed some pretty deep indents in the first, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 frets here. And I noticed that I started getting some buzzing on this guitar as well when playing it. So obviously we need to get rid of those indents and get this straight again. So we have this beam, and basically go back and forth until we get rid of those little indents and everything's nice and flat. So that's kind of where I am right now. So then what we're going to do is, after we got that done, we have to recrown these frets. So what I'm going to do to show you how that's done, and I've had other videos showing this as well, but I'm going to put this camera up on top, up above, and get like a sky cam view of it, give you a better idea what's going on. So just hold on, please. Well, hopefully you can see everything okay up there. So what I'm going to do is, I got a marker here, blue marker, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this marker and I'm going to put some blue marks on the frets like that. Get this thing up a little bit nice and even like this. Hopefully you can see that fine. And then I've got this this crowning file that I got from StewMac, and it's a Z file or Z file. I'm not sure exactly how they call it, but it's got 2 grooves on it, one for jumbo, one for regular frets. And really all you got to do is run back and forth on top of this fret, and it'll recrown it for you. So basically it's a pretty simple process. You just basically put it on the fret like that and run it back and forth, and the goal is to get a nice thin blue line showing on top of that fret. That's the goal. So we're rounding the corners, and we're getting a nice thin line to show. So I'm going to do a few of them, and then I'm going to bring the camera down and I'm going to show you what it looks like when they're properly crowned. So you can see what's going on. Yeah, it's doing a nice job. So just a little bit more to get this one finished up. A little bit more. Just like that. Now we'll go to the next one. Now as I get farther down the fretboard here, I won't have to sand or file as much, because this is the ones up here that had the deep grooves in them. And as I get farther down the board, there's very little to do. A little bit more in the center here. We're getting there. That looks about right. Go over these one more time here. Make sure that they're nice and smooth and even. That's looking good. I'm going to do the first 1, 2, I'll do the first 5, and then I'm going to bring the camera down and give you a close-up view of what this looks like when they're crowned. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to bring this down for a close-up view. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to go in here for a close-up, so hopefully you can see this. So what I've done is I've done the first 5. Now, if you look, I'll try to get the light right for you. You can see that thin blue line that's remaining on top on the first 5 frets. That's what you're trying to get to. After you've leveled the frets, and I'm with this crowning tool, is you put the blue on and then you use the crowning tool like I showed you, and you get exactly what we're looking at there. Just a thin, even blue line right across the top of the frets. So hopefully that gives you an idea of where we're at. So I'm not going to bore you with the rest of the fretboard. I'm going to continue on, and I'll start this up again when I start the polishing and show that as well. So stand by and hold on. Well, we finished on the crowning there. So the ZZ file, it's done its job. So now what's left to do is the polishing. Now, one thing, everybody has a different way of polishing. And I'm just going to show you my way. I use 1500 grit. Very, very fine sandpaper. And what I do is I cut a little bit like this. Cut a strip off. And I take a normal eraser. And I start by wrapping that on the eraser. So it looks like this. Then I take that, and that's where I start running it back and forth on this fret to polish it up. And the nice thing about this is that with this done like that, nice and tight, I'm right on the top of the fret, and this isn't going to go down. It doesn't go down and hit the fretboard, because I'm just running across the top here. Just so I can see a little better, I'm going to cut some of that off. And we're going to polish this guy. Just like that. And if I'm a little worried about hitting that fretboard, then we can do a little masking tape like this. Doesn't take very long. And that gives us protection. And we're going to polish this fret. Now, one thing about this this 1500, 1600 grit, it's not going to take anything as far as metal off the top of lower the frets in any way. It's so fine. All it's going to do, it's going to take the fine little scratches off that this bar left on, basically. and it's right on the top, eh? So we do that to a fine polish, just like that, and we just move her down, and we keep moving along until we've got the whole fretboard done. This is actually the part that takes the longest time, is this part right here that I'm showing you now. Crowning with that StewMac Z file or Z file, that makes short order of crowning these frets. It used to be a real pain in the butt doing them, but that file was well worth the money on time saved when you're doing fret crowning. And you know what? You can tell when this thing is smooth, because what's happening here, as I start a new fret, as far as the polishing goes, what I'm running into is when you first start it with this this little bit of sandpaper here, you can feel it grabbing. You can feel it. And you know that it's got some resistance. But after you've run it back and forth like this, like I have a few times like that, all of a sudden it gets really, really smooth. It's just like, feels like butter. There's no resistance at all. And at that point, that's just about where it is now, I know I've got a highly polished fret with no more little lines left in it. So I'm going to go down one more. So you see it goes along pretty quick. And we're going to do the next one. I'm going to put some new tape. That tape has lost its stickiness, so no big deal. We'll put some fresh tape on. Just like that. Got this next one here. Whoop. The rubber fell out. That's okay. There we go. Back to the polishing here. The thing about this is, because that rubber has got a little bit of softness to it, when I push down on this, not only is it polishing the very top of the fret, it's also wrapping around a little bit down on the sides, and it's getting the sides where the crowning was done as well. So this is the whole idea of getting this thing as shiny and as smooth as possible. And that's looking pretty good. Gonna go down one more now. And we just keep going. That's the only way to do it. I've seen other guys with little spinning wheels and all kinds of little things that they use, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just that this is the way I do it, and this one needs I just noticed this one here needs a little bit more right on this edge here. You can see it right there. And you got to push pretty hard. I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on here, just so you know. Now I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring the camera down here, I think, so you can see the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, the five that I polished. This one needs a little bit right there. Just a little bit on the edge here. What you're trying to make sure of is that there's no little burrs showing. And that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to bring you down. I'm going to give you a close-up view of the first 5 frets as opposed to the rest of them so you can see the difference here. So just stand by. So here we are, look at the neck here, and what we're going to do, we're going to focus on the first 5 frets. So we're actually going to be looking at this 1, 2, 3, 4 down to here. And if you look at this, I try to get the light right, you can see how shiny those frets are, you know, across the top and on the side. So they're shiny, 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 shiny. You can see the light hitting them as I move this camera back and forth. Now if I go down past here and look at this one, so the one on the this one is one that's been done. These haven't been. So look at the difference between that fret and the top of this fret, and see the scuff marks that are on here. You know, there's a little bit. Let me take the blue off, but you can see the difference between this fret and these frets. And obviously, you know, with those kind of little dings or little scratches on those frets, that's going to interfere with the playing. You know, if you don't have a nice sharp edge on the top of that fret, your intonation could be off. So you know, you're playing sharp, you know, or flat or something like that is going to happen. They also when you do a bend on a string, you want that bend to slide right across that fret. And if the frets are all like these, with all those little scratches across the top of them, that string is not going to bend nicely. So there's 2 or 3 reasons why this polishing is important. The other thing too is if you get a little ding on the fret, it seems to the string will eat away at it, and that little mark will get deeper and deeper and deeper. It's important that you don't let this go too far. You know, if you've been playing the guitar a lot, and you start noticing that those little dings in where the strings have dug in are starting to get deep. You get it to a tech and get them dressed up like I'm doing here, because you let them go too far, you're going to be in for a total refret job on this fretboard. And you know what? The time it takes to go into to take all those frets out and do all the leveling, put them all in, you're looking at a $300 to $400 bill to refret this like an entire fretboard like that. You know, with a little bit of maintenance like this, you're looking at maybe an hour and a half. You know, $100, you know, to get it all done and all leveled off. As a far cry, $100 to $350, $400. So, you know, take care and keep an eye out for that. So I'm going to continue on and finish up with this, and there's no sense video taping the rest of it, but I'll continue on till I finish the polishing on all the rest of these frets that are on this fretboard. So just stand by. We'll be back. Okay, group, we got the frets all polished, so we're just going to give you a little look at them so you kind of see what they look like when they're done. As I run the camera up and down and put the light on there, you can see what those frets are like. So you just, that's what they should look like. You know, you can see the light is just like a mirror now on those frets. So that's the goal that we're after on the polishing. Now it took me a good hour to polish these, just so you know. I went over these things about 3 times with that fine grit paper, and moved that tape all the way up and down, and it took about 3 times I went over this to get them looking like that. But you can certainly see, I get back here and I move across, you can see what I'm talking about with the light. Anyway, we're going to go up to the Skycam because we're going to do some conditioning on this fretboard next, so stand by. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to clean these, clean the fretboard off a bit. I'm just using like lighter fluid, if you will, to make sure there's no dirt or grime in there. So we clean it up nice and good like this. Make sure I think we're okay. Wasn't a very dirty fretboard to start off with, but it's a good idea to clean it up before you put linseed oil on it to recondition it. And this stuff, it evaporates right away, so it's nice and clean now. You can see the grime that come off of that. Most of that's probably from my sanding though. So just got myself a little bit of a paper towel here, and I've got some raw linseed oil that I'm going to put on here. And I'm only putting on just a couple drops, it's not a lot. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to apply that on this rosewood. And what this is going to do, it's going to seal up the wood, and that's going to keep it from drying out and hopefully keep the grime and dirt out of it as best you can, you know. So that's our next goal with doing this conditioning. And just word of caution, you don't put this on in gobs, This is just a very, very, very light coat that I'm putting on. Like, I'm probably going to do this whole fretboard with about 3 or 4 drops of this linseed oil. So you don't want it caked on there. You don't want it sitting in it like a pool in there either. So you can see what it's looking like now. You can see the dirt coming out of it. Still, even after I cleaned it with that lighter fluid, it's still coming out. But that's going to be fine once this is done. And that's pretty well it for the conditioning of this this fretboard. So it didn't take long. But like I say, just a few drops is all you need. Try to get into as close to the frets as I can with that. Any spots I miss, I'm just gonna give it a good eyeball here. Looks pretty good. Okay, with that said and done, we put this away. Now the next thing I've got to figure out is, I went and I took these frets down a bit, and of course the thing is now, by dropping these frets, is this nut going to be a little on the high side. I took quite a bit off on these frets, so the issue I have now is wondering if that nut should come down just a little bit. So because if it turns out this nut is too high after dropping these frets down a little bit and the leveling, then when I push down on the string, it's gonna be sharp. The notes are gonna be sharp. So especially up in this area here. So I'm going to have to think about that for a few minutes and decide what I'm going to do. So well, I'm thinking I'm going to go make a coffee and relax here with a coffee and ponder this dilemma, and I'll be back shortly. Well, I decided I would change the nut. I figured I'd pull that nut out because I dropped the frets down quite a bit. So I figured I'd knock that nut out and sand a little bit off the bottom, just a hair, just so that I make sure I got the nut at the right size, and I'd measure it too and make sure it's right. But unfortunately, I ran into a little bit of a problem, and I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to show you the guitar. Hold on. Well, here we go with it on the bench, and we're going to take a look at where that nut come out of. It looks really nice right now and clean, but let me tell you what happened. I went to tap that nut out, and the nut would not come out. In fact, let me just go into the other room here. I threw most of it in the garbage can, but basically what happened, here we are back in this area. Take a look, the nut is all smashed. Basically what happened, whoever put that nut in, looks like what they had done, they decided to do a good glue job. So they had the nut glued, the whole base of it glued right across. So when I tried to knock that nut out, I figured I'd just give it a little tap like usually you can, and take a little bit off the bottom, drop it down just a tad. No way, it wouldn't come out. So I give it a little harder tap, and it shattered into pieces. There's one of the pieces. Like I say, the rest is in the garbage. Then it took me about a half an hour to clean this slot out, because it had been full of glue, and of course the nut broke off and pieces of plastic were stuck in there. So to make a long story short, I I gotta put this on hold. I've ordered in a couple new nuts for this for both Strat and Telecaster, so I'll keep them on the shelf just as on inventory. And you know, then I thought, well, you know what, these tuners I believe are 13-to-1. And they're non-locking tuners on this nice guitar. So I decided to bite the bullet. The guitar's down and out now anyways with no nut on it, waiting for a nut to come in. So I ordered a really nice set of top of the line Fender 18-to-1 locking tuners that are going to come in for this baby. So that's kind of where it sits right now, group. And we'll take this video up in probably a week or so, when I get the nut and the tuners back in. Over and out for now.